Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is August 4th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, big news today. The Ukrainians have damaged a major Russian ship in the port city of Novorossiysk, as you can see. The port city of Novorossiysk is located on the Black Sea, just off of Crimea, as you can see. So it is right over here, a very big target. And so the Ukrainians managed to damage a huge landing ship. So let's take a look at this ship in question. So this was hit and targeted by a Ukrainian unmanned sea vessel, so USV drone, and basically you can see this was footage that was released by the Ukrainian military just before the impact against this Russian ship, and this ship is called the Olenohorsky Hornik. It's a landing ship that transports vehicles, military vehicles to the front line. And I think the Russians were planning on using these ships, or one of these ships, initially during the first phase of the war to land their tanks in Odessa and some other port cities in Ukraine. But that obviously did not happen. And so now all they do is just float around in the Black Sea. So that's first step number one. And then let's not forget that these Ukrainian sea drones can carry a very, very heavy payload, between 200 to 400 kilograms of explosives. And so following the explosion, you can see a few hours later, there is serious damage on this ship. It has tipped on its side. The back of the ship also started sinking, and it had to get towed away to the Novorossiysk port. And as you can see now, it's in shallow waters, docked. And you can see that there is probably some oil that is leaking out of the ship, and the back of the ship is also sinking slowly. So for sure, this ship is going to be a total loss, in my opinion. I seriously doubt that the Russians, with their lack of experience in repairs, are going to be able to repair this ship. So this is extremely fantastic news. And this proves yet again that Russia has no ability to control the Black Sea, despite its bluffs that it will target, cargo ships traveling to Ukrainian ports or any port on the Black Sea. It simply is an indication that Russia is incapable of protecting even its own Black Sea fleet. And so what's funny as well is that Ukraine, which pretty much doesn't have a navy, it only has a few patrol ships, boats, and these unmanned sea vessels, is able to sink and destroy and damage so many Russian major flagships, right? The Moskva. Now we have also in Berdyansk. They managed in early phase of the war in March 2022, they managed to also damage several ships. And so the Ukrainians are very ingenious in terms of how they're able to damage and destroy Russian ships. So I really like what I see here, and it's a positive trend. I hope that the Ukrainians will continue hitting Russian targets, as we've seen as well with even a few days ago hitting the Moscow city center, the business center of Moscow, with their long-range drones that can go as far as 1,000 kilometers. And that was done 2 days in a row. And so the Ukrainians are becoming more and more confident at utilizing their drones against Russian targets in Russia. So let's continue. Let's hope that Ukraine continues on attacking legitimate Russian targets in Russia. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that, of course, we anticipated prior to the Ukrainian counteroffensive, that includes myself, this offensive to go much faster, much quicker. But reality kicked in, and the fact is that obviously Russia has had a lot of time to prepare its defenses. And this is a good article from the CNN, where Danilov, which is a spokesperson for the Ukrainian, I think, military, echoes some very important things to remember as to why it's so slow right now for the Ukrainian military. And I'm not complaining here. I totally understand why this counteroffensive is slower than is anticipated. And so what I like to hear is, what I like to read in this article is that he said that no one can set deadlines for us but ourselves. There is no schedule, and I have never used the phrase counteroffensive. These are military operations. They're complex, difficult, and depend on many factors. The main task for us is to save the lives of our people at the front, and we also have to understand that the enemy has prepared for these events very well, with a huge number of territories mined. And he says that on average, there are about 3 to 5 mines per square meter. Imagine how difficult the work is to remove them, to allow our military to move afterwards. Truly, this is insane. And obviously, the Institute for the Study of War said that the Ukrainians switched to slower and more careful operations while disrupting Russians near rear areas with long-range precision strikes. And as we've seen in the last few weeks, that was hitting the Kerch Bridge yet again, the Chonhar Bridge, the Savage Bridge, and major logistical hubs, including Melitopol, Tokmak, Mariupol, and other ammunition depots in Crimea and air bases. Ukraine has been doing a lot to really degrade Russian logistics. So I think there's another thing I want to add to this is that Russia's been preparing for decades to fight against NATO. They have been stockpiling decades worth of weaponry to fight against multiple countries. And right now they're fighting Ukraine, a tiny little country that is, almost 3 to 4 times smaller than Russia in terms of population, and its size is also much smaller. And we are having expectations that somehow Ukraine is going to perform like a NATO country. Of course, it's not going to perform like a NATO country. Ukraine is receiving weaponry from NATO, but of course, these are not the fully pledged weaponry that Ukraine was supposed to receive. Ukraine should have been, trained to fly the F-16s a year ago, and only now there's reports that they're only now in August, the training for the F-16s is going to start. There seems to be a very passive sort of, I shouldn't say passive, but an attitude, a philosophy that we don't want to escalate. We want to, have Russia die by 1,000 cuts, which is at the detriment of Ukrainian lives as well, because Ukrainians are paying with the biggest price, and that is the lives and their own blood. Right? Whereas, of course, the Ukrainians and even myself are extremely grateful for the help that they're receiving. Without this help, Ukraine would not be in a good shape right now. But we need to understand that the Ukrainians are not fighting just some small little miserable army. They're fighting one of the largest armies in the world that has been preparing for decades against a full-scale conflict, pretty much planetary. And the Ukrainians are doing the impossible right now, not only defending successfully its territories, but also going the counteroffensive against the mighty Russian army. And the Russians will mobilize as many people as they want and as they need. As we've seen, hundreds of thousands of Russians are okay with dying for Putin, for the great motherland, and that's just a fact, right? And even if they're going to be poorly equipped, they're going to be okay dying because they don't have a choice. And there's various reasons too, as I've said, great motherland for Putin, sometimes even financial gains, right? They can steal and loot as much as they want in Ukraine. So we have to understand these facts, and we also need to settle our expectations to more realistic expectations. And only the Ukrainians can decide when they want to end this conflict. So please be understanding of this fact. The Ukrainian army is not perfect. There's a lot of issues as well, but the Ukrainian army is doing its best, and it has proven time and time again that it's capable of doing serious damage, and it's capable of advancing forward. Even if it's inch by inch, square meter by square meter, the Ukrainians are going to get the job done. Just believe in them and continue supporting the Ukrainians by either funding, these drone fundraisers to help the Ukrainian army succeed. The last thing I want to talk about is very important peace talks are going to occur in Saudi Arabia this weekend in the city of Jeddah. So the reason why it's so important is that there's going to be officials from about 30 countries that have been invited and will participate in these peace talks. And so this also includes BRICS countries, which are obviously more aligned with Russia. They're more of an ally, let's say, of Russia. That includes Brazil, India, and South Africa. There's also nations from the global south that are going to take part of in these peace talks, such as Indonesia, Mexico, Zambia, and Egypt, the United Kingdom, Poland, many representatives of the European Union. And so it's still unclear whether China is going to attend, but let's give it a 50-50. There seems to be an indication that China might attend, especially because they're very unhappy with the Russians hitting Ukrainian ports lately. And these ports have been holding grain that was meant to be imported to China as well and the global south, which is also going to destabilize China a little bit. So they're very unhappy, so I wouldn't be surprised if China is going to attend. But the most important thing is that Russia has not been invited, right? Sorry, Russia, but you're an aggressor. You're the one that started this whole ordeal. And so you don't get to have a voice in these peace talks, which is great. So personally, myself, I'm not a huge fan of Mohammed bin Salman, especially following the whole controversy of the murder of Khashoggi, and him trying to somehow pretend that he's, this represents peaceful values and all that. But I think that there's no better place to hold peace talks than in the middle of a desert, and there's no more neutral space than that. So I still applaud this initiative. Let's hope that something good comes out of it. And there's a positive thing to take out of this. If there's a positive thing to take out of this, is that there's an indication that there's many countries that are interested in a resolution in this conflict, and that they want to be heard as well. So this is very positive. And the most important thing is, because we've seen these peace talks in the past and nothing really good came out of it. And if something comes out of it, I really hope that this is going to be a pro-Ukrainian stance, right? And understanding that this peace needs to be pro-Ukrainian. It can be forcing Ukraine to yet again compromise. Ukraine has compromised many times in the past. Let's take a look again. I've brought examples in my past video: the Budapest Memorandum, the Minsk agreements, and Ukraine was left on the losing end, right? They agreed to peace, they agreed to compromise, and look where Ukraine has ended itself in. So let's hope that Ukraine wins this, this peace talk in terms of convincing the world that they need to be on Ukraine's side and on Russia's side, or kind of neutral. Because being neutral or on Russia's side is being allied with Russia. So let's hope for that. So let's ensure that Ukraine wins the peace and the war against Russia. So let me know what you guys expect on these peace talks. Do you think it's going to be another, another failed sort of peace talk that's not going to go anywhere, that's going nowhere, that's not really going to provide anything of value? I'm interested to hear your opinion, but it's really huge that there's a lot of countries that previously haven't really been invited in the past are now taking part of this peace talk in Saudi Arabia. So that's the video for today, guys. I appreciate your support. I really am very thankful for your support. If you enjoy my content, subscribe to my channel. And let's hope that the Ukrainian army continues sinking and damaging Russian ships in the future. I'll keep you guys updated. Thank you and take care. Bye.